I'm going to introduce our podcast today. Welcome to the Sabrina EMOTIVATIon Podcast, where you get to witness real time two artists try and stay on topic. Now to Sabrina, our host. I feel like that is completely accurate given episode 1 and 2. We have this list of questions that's been with us for like 5 weeks, and we're like,
that's not what's important.
Never. I'm like setting up a throne in here because of all the tangents that I'm ready to do.
It looks so great in there.
Dude, it's so comfy. First off, this little tiny piano bitch has been throwing out my lower back like an old woman. And then Kyle's got this gaming chair, but also it's like slightly an old man chair. And like the bottom just kind of tips this way, which is horrible as well. If you know anything about like sitting Kundalini style, lotus, whatever, you got to have just an elevated this way. So I'm sitting on a pillow, and then I put this because I also like to snuggle. So I got my a blanket and a hot cocoa.
Is that what's all on the chair? Like the whole thing is your blanket?
This pillow, this blanket, my hot cocoa. It's still fall, but I've already jumped the gun. I'm like, I had my pumpkin spice lattes and I'm done. Christmas is here. Pumpkin spice, peppermint.
Welcome to episode 4 of the EMOTIVATIon Podcast, where we put energy in motion towards mental freedom. On this podcast, we talk emotional intelligence, spread mental health awareness, and sometimes get a bit metaphysical and esoteric. Today's episode is part 3 of diving into the subconscious mind of an artist. If you haven't heard part 1 or 2 yet, go ahead and click the links in the description down below and take a listen. For those who haven't, here's a refresher. I asked a question on all of my social media platforms to all of my artist friends. I'm sorry for all of the non-artist friends that I didn't address. I'm just kidding. The question was, what are your biggest struggles, insecurities, and fears as an artist? Today, my guest, Lindsey, and I are going to discuss each of your responses together for sure, we promise. But first, if you don't know already, I want to remind everyone who Lindsey is, for those who haven't listened to part 1 or 2.
Like when you talk about emotional intelligence, I'm like, I don't know if I should be the person that, you know what, if people like it, we'll see the views. All right, whatever.
People do like it.
I know, we got pretty good views last time, more than you even have subscribers. I was like, what? Who are these people? I mean, all right. I did listen. Dude, I did listen to it, and the authority stuff was pretty cool. Like, everyone deals with that, you know? So we'll see what comes up today.
The definition of authority.
Dude, insert wherever you need to. I'm glad that you were like going through and you're like, okay, we better insert, like, we better like focus, because, you know, it helps lead people through. It helps ground our conversation. Both of us are so airy and so artistry-ish, you know, that like we have a hard time staying grounded. So do that in the editing portion. That's fine.
I'll do, yeah. I did it to help me too, because I was like, what does authority mean? But anyways, Lindsey over here, this person right here, right there,
okay.
Right down, up, is a musician. She plays piano, she sings, she's a dancer, skilled intuitive, she's a dog trainer, and a hobby researcher of the mind. She's everything. She's an artist. I will not ask you if there's anything that you would like to say before we kick off to the responses.
Questions. Okay, good. You're learning a lesson. This is awesome.
So the question, let me just reread it again. So, it's right there. I'm going to reread it again for everyone who's listening. I wrote, what are your biggest struggles, insecurities, and fears as an artist? The first response that I will read that we got was, someone said, feeling like I won't be able to improve on it and not have as much patience to focus for long. So I'm assuming they mean art. So feeling like I won't be able to improve on art and not have as much patience to focus for too long.
Cool. I'm writing things because this helps me ground myself, because I just start going off into like a third dimension, like, oh wow, what does improvement mean? This person need not worry in the grand scheme of things. Hold on, wait, no. Okay, improvement. So this is basically improvement based. Like, how do you feel like you're making improvements and progress? Because the fear you're not. Do you want to address this question first?
You address it first. I'm gonna write some notes of mine myself too.
Cool. So whenever I'm doing, this is like the getting into the spiritual practice of the self, right? And how to just not be angry all the time, which is really like why people adopt a lot of spiritual practices and work on themselves, is so that they don't feel so reactive. Okay. I first get down to what's the feeling that I'm feeling. That's feeling identification. That's why you inserted the definition last time of authority, is really understanding in the mind what this feeling is, which is very difficult all the time. Like for me, depending on what it is day to day, I have things that I can process out super quick, like literally while I'm checking out at the grocery store. And I have things that take me weeks to process out because I don't have the identification. So my first thing that comes to mind would be like, all right, what's the definition and the feeling? How does it feel to improve? What is that feeling when you feel like, oh yeah, I learned something, like you grasped the concept? And there's different levels of improvement. I've had times where I'm teaching students and I learn something like while I'm teaching because of the way that I have to say it. And it's not a big feeling, like it's a small feeling. And then I have times where I'm working on something and I get like, physically a arpeggio or a run that's been very frustrating, and I got the dexterity of it, and I feel a very big margin of improvement. It's a big feeling, not a small feeling. So first, think about how it feels. That would be your heart response to it, right? And then let's actually define, given that this is like a word-based type podcast type thing we got going on, what is the definition of improvement? And I can look it up. You can look it up. I can also say I define things. I actually very heart center define my words. If I don't actually know the word legitimately, it's outside of my vocabulary, I will go and look on Webster. So I think we should, for sure, like identify the Webster version too.
There's a definition here from Google. Do you want me to read it?
Oh, Google owns everything. Let's do that. Yeah. Everything Google says is right, including about the election. Oh!
Maybe I should reconsider that. Just kidding. Come on, we'll trust Google to this extent.
Okay.
Improvement is a noun. Improvement means it's an example or instance of improving or being improved. That's kind of dumb. That's what. Okay.
Google already failing us.
Yeah, the action of improving or being improved, a thing that makes something better or is better than something else. Okay, so why don't we look up the definition of improve?
There you go, improve. Mm-hmm. And also, I'm going to write this down, better, because that's another feeling.
Yeah, so improve.
Typically better than.
It means make or become better. Mm-hmm. Develop or increase in mental capacity by education or experience. Mm-hmm. And it also means achieve or produce something better than.
Cool. So one thing I want to point out in this in definitions, and why I tell people to heart center their definitions, is that whenever we're looking into identification of something, we're very used to doing it in the mind. That's what the mind does, is the mind is like a processor. And so you can understand, like it said on there, what did it say? Improvement, like intellectually becoming better. So does that mean that your body can't improve or that your emotions can't improve? No, obviously not. But that's like where our definitions tend to take us, is a very mind-centric thing. Not bad, just take into consideration. So one, improvement is something that's based on a comparison or a contrast to something, let's say previous, because usually it's going to be in a timeline, right? So something that is better, contrasting something previous. And really, improvement, when you don't feel it, what I would say is a result of stagnation. So that means that as your timeline is going along, your heart or your body or your mind too, but you don't feel the change that is expected. And when that change doesn't happen, you get like you see the side effects come in. Procrastination is the number one for me. Procrastination, which is when I can't get movement here, I'll get it someplace else. And when you don't get past that movement here, you just stop working here. I still am like making comedy skits I still need to upload a video on procrastination with piano, because I'm dealing with this big time, like huge time. Even though I'm like, I'm a pianist, I'm in alignment with the fact that I am like a horrendous procrastinator. And actually what's great is that like teaching and doing stuff for the kids forces me to practice, because I'll do it, I'll do it for them or whatnot. But getting back to our improvement and not on tangents, right? Because we're staying on topic. That's what this podcast is. Feeling that contrast from before. And that improvement is going to be the change in the contrast. So the question was about not feeling that improvement. So, I mean, you're literally an artist, obviously. What is your consequence at your job, or even in your personal work, whatever work you're doing? What's your consequence when you feel like you're not improving, or what's an example of that? Do you have any?
It depends, because sometimes that like it's literally just a feeling, you know. It's literally a result of, sometimes it's a result of your inner critic, you know, because you can't judge yourself too harshly if you aren't doing something for a very long time. You have to, in order to actually see improvement, you actually have to dedicate a certain amount of time to the practice, or to the piece, or to the art. So others might see you improve faster than you see yourself.
Always.
So I wrote down a couple of notes. I have a couple of things to like a couple of I don't know, strategies or things that you can do when you're in this mindset.
Do us, girl. We need all the help we can get.
One thing I always tell people, I know people can hate this. Sorry,
Don't say the word. Take it back.
I'll bleep that. I'm gonna try to keep this clean.
I know I'm horrible. We're okay. By the way, cuss words, they're just an expression of yourself.
I'm actually really okay with it. And I actually don't have my videos open to children anyways, for the most part, because it's just better for.
I always bleep it with like a little like on my videos. Yeah, I try to bleep it because it's not polite. Like, it is not polite to cuss. But anyways, girl, be flowy. So, it's authentic to you. Do it.
So I know people don't like this, and for a while I didn't like this either, because we don't like. It's kind of like hearing yourself sing, and you're just like, oh, what is that? It's kind of the same.
About cussing right now, or you're talking about your?
Oh no, I'm going back to my advice.
Oh, okay, going back. Cool. We made the switch, everyone. Let's bring all the grounded people with us. Yay.
So we're done with the cussing.
Okay.
So my one biggest piece of advice I always tell people is record your progress, whether you are a musician. Every single time, even if it's rough, record it. I love that, like for artists, if anybody who has iPads nowadays and they're drawing on Procreate, it actually records a time lapse already automatically when you draw on an iPad software. Yeah. And I love this. This is perfect for digital artists, especially because digital artists, if you're drawing on a program, we fall crippled to, we use Command Z as a crutch, which is undo. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times we don't see all of the lines that we're drawing or that we're making, because we're undoing it all. Whereas if you have a piece of paper, you feel a little bit more accomplished if you're drawing a picture, because if you're using the eraser, you feel more of a sense of how much you're using it. But I always as far as that goes, I always tell people, because I took a really good class at Concept Design Academy. This one teacher taught us it was a sketching class, dynamic sketching, and they teach us to never use pencil. They teach us to only use pen and draw with pen.
That sounds miserable.
It sounds miserable, but it
was so effective.
It increases mileage, so you see you're more conscious of the lines that you're making, whereas if you're using a pencil, you're like, oh, I'm just gonna like love my eraser and just erase everything, and then you're gonna feel completely like comfortable with the eraser, but you're never gonna break out of that like comfort zone. Yes. That's where you're fully like more, you increase your confidence in your lines. But anyways, that's it. So I always say, whether you're a dancer, a musician, or an artist, record your progress or save your drawings, record yourself dancing. That's a big one. Like, I know in dance classes, I have a lot of friends that like are very camera shy, and they're not okay with being on camera. But I've asked a couple of friends before, I'm like, why don't you just record on your camera You don't have to post it anywhere. It's important to, it's not narcissistic either to like look at yourself.
Before and the after. It's literally like what they do with weight loss all the time. It's just a time lapse. Like
exactly.
Yeah.
So is one way of truly seeing your improvement. That's one a piece of advice that I'll give people. Another piece of advice is I would say to give and I'll call this the 1 hour rule. Whatever practice you're doing, if you're practicing or if you're actually strictly working on something, push past 1 hour. I promise you, past that 1 hour, you will start to see an improvement in just that little short amount of time, or you'll start to see yourself loosen up, whether it's dance, whether it's music, whether it's drawing. Because in that first hour, you are working past your blocks mentally, and you are also kind of like oiling the machine, you know, like it needs to, or you're warming up your body, you know. You need to get everything kind of warmed up and also coordinated. And then once you're in that flow, that's when you start to actually produce great results. So I always tell people, push past at least 1 hour. And you'll start to actually notice a difference in like, okay, now you're feeling more confident in what you're doing. Because in the beginning, this response brings up the word patience. The opposite of patience comes from the inner self-critic, those mental blocks that are telling you like, this is crap, like, this isn't going to turn out the way I want it, or like, what the hell am I doing? Where is this going? Or we have all these limiting self-beliefs that are even deeper, that are resurfacing in that moment because you're performing on the spot for yourself, you know, and you're like, oh my God, like, you know, like I was a failure at this age. Like, what makes me think that I'm going to like succeed in this moment and like bust out some cool art, you know? So
age is a big one. That whole like, by this point I should be here, you know, like, oh, at this age that, you know, like that's a huge thing. That gets me all the time. Like that I took time off piano, and like that I'm this age and I don't know this about theory, and like, oh man.
Exactly. And a great thing to battle that, what I do personally is I think more, I try to consciously switch my mindset to more of a, less of a lack mindset and more of like a gratitude mindset. So I like to go back and look at things I have produced or I have done that's really great. And even if it wasn't great by my definition, I saw, like I could physically see, this is what social media is great for. You can physically see what people like. And I like to also look at other people's art that I feel, I don't want to like say like to put yourself on a high horse and then think that you're better than everyone, but I like, it is okay to go and look for art that you don't even, that you personally feel like you're a match to, where you can do just as good or you feel like you can do better. And I like to tell, like, I like to personally look at art that's along those levels, because then I like to see that, oh, look, people like that art too, and I can do that. Yeah. So like, I don't see this like great, amazing, whatever million follower artist or something like that. And with this, I don't know, this artist has been drawing their entire freaking life, and they're just like, they never take a break, and you can see it in their art.
Love in their life.
They're prodigy, some crap. I don't know, but I don't need to be like that. Like, everybody starts somewhere, even no matter what age you are. And I guess my last, I wanted to say one more thing. Oh my goodness, now I'm blanking.
Because I'm not interrupting you, so you better think about it.
If you have something to say, go for it.
Yeah, I wrote down some things. One, brilliant about the recording thing, because literally Instagram has kept me alive. This is one of the reasons why I like the social media, you know, all these people get on social media and how bad it is. But the thing is it's a tool. And actually I wanted to show my tool. So this is a camera adapter. You can get them on Amazon if we have the video footage and everything. And basically it plugs USB style into your, it plugs USB style either into your computer, or also you can, from your keyboard. So as long as you have an electric keyboard, USB, which most of them have nowadays anyways, okay? And then you plug it straight into your iPad, and it goes keyboard to iPad. You don't have to have any app. You don't have to have anything. It goes straight in. And then you can just take, and then you can just do as many reps as you can. So I'll put up, it's so funny. But like when I do my funny videos, you know, people are like, wow, what a beautiful arrangement of pure imagination. I got a lot of attention on that one. And I was like, yeah, that was like 150 takes. Like, nobody knows your shame, you know? And it's very quick and easy as well. And you can post your little things on Instagram. So one thing actually that I'm trying to do, and why I am like slowly but surely, you know, getting up a YouTube, is that I know that everything that I am is what has been criticized in stereotypical education. Meaning, education will tell you, by this age, you better be here. You better have this type of resume. You better have this type of skill set. And if you don't, like, you're constantly under threat of failure. I mean, it's used as a pushing agent, but also I was the person who got demotivated by it because I don't take a lot of stress. That's part of being ungrounded, is that I don't just load up a bunch of expectation on my shoulders and live with it. I just release the expectation, which I don't think is a bad thing. And when I was younger, what happened is I would actually release the hobby with the expectation, which is not, you know, I figured that out now, is that I don't have to stop playing piano because I can't reach an expectation. You don't have to stop drawing because, or, you know, doing any kind of creative art because you can't reach that expectation. But the blah blah blah, getting back to recording. So do your recording stuff. And then also one other thing, when you got down into practicing with like lines, that was a very awesome, like technical, specifically applicable to artistry, right? One of the things applicable to piano, and I think my piano is on. I turned it on just in case we needed it, right? I call it the circle of death. And the circle of death is a practice technique that if you can get down, it will really help you clean up your piano playing. So if you get into something like, okay, this is like a very fast song. It's got a boogie bass on it, but bumble boogie. It's pretty common, like for more advanced students when you're getting along. Okay, and you've got a boogie bass. Okay, and your right hand is that little bumble, like you have the traditional Flight of the Bumblebee song. This is different, but it's just like chromatics, you know, where you're going up and down, right? So the right hand is, okay. Now in this song, there's lots of like chromatics that you go up and down and whatever, that's really fast, right? And that's the kind of technicality that people get stuck on. Well, what you do is you segment it out, and instead of going through the segments like measure 1, measure 2, measure 3, you circle of death, measure 1 until it sounds good, and you slow it down, and then you speed it up, but you stay in that measure 1 without stopping time. So if you have a metronome, which you always want, metronome.
I remember that.
That's pretty slow. Hold on.
You can try it at speeds.
Oh my God, I cannot keep time on this. This is awesome. Wow, that is totally horrible. I haven't done that song in a hot minute. And my timing, by the way, was horrible when I was younger, and I'm getting better at it now. But you can just sit in that measure. On a circle. And what I was doing right there was I was like, oh God, I should not have used this as an example. But I was like, oh God, make it look like you have a skill set. That's fine. Sitting there in that circle trying to get on beat, but I didn't stop. You notice I didn't stop. And I'm just sitting trying to get on beat. Whether I did that successfully, to be honest, I didn't want to sit and make you listen to my circle of death for 32 measures. Cool. But that's exactly what you do, is you sit in that measure, or that wherever your issue is. I have another one where it's a stride hand I've been doing for my kids, you know. Girls in white dresses with blue satin sashes. You know that song, whatever that song. Oh, favorite things. There it is. Okay. And the left hand is getting me where I just can't make it to that B. Right here, I'm always off on it. So I'll just sit on that measure forever and circle of death.
Yeah. What I used to do for music. That sounds beautiful. What I used to do for music is like especially piano, because I self-taught I taught myself piano because I knew how to read music.
Like a T-Rex with only 3 fingers, like all my self-taught pianists come to me.
I think so. I think I probably
Yeah, they use their 1, 2, and 3 fingers, and they just skip out on the 4 and 5, and I'm like, oh.
Pinky and I used all my fingers because there were certain songs that like you couldn't otherwise and I did use both hands but I taught myself some like anime songs or whatever, so I already knew what they sounded like. And my rule is I would work measure by measure, so I would probably work on like either 1 or 2 measures at a time, and for that day I would master those 2 measures, and the moment that I felt confident and comfortable with it, I didn't need the sheet music. It like came at some point. It was just like memory. Like I could memorize those 2 measures because I practiced it so much, and it flowed perfectly. Like there was no like hiccups or anything, and at any point in time I could play it without the sheet music. And not only did it help me like master those 2 measures, but it made the rest of the song get easier and easier, because once you master technique, it makes everything a breeze.
And you have those, especially with like music, you'll have those transitionary measures that are very difficult. It's like a transition place from a place that and a place that and there's like a transition space. So that's what I was doing right there, the arpeggio, whatever.
I'm like, I don't know the words.
Whenever I hit a wrong note, I'm like, wait, hold on, I have to get it right. But you have those transitionary measures, and if you can get through those transitionary measures, and that's what practice is. And as you can see, like, hopefully I can be an example of like someone who's pretending to enjoy this process all the way through, because it's not a cure for improvement. It's just what we do anyways. It's just how we persevere in what we do anyways. And something else I wanted to talk about, because you were talking about how you just got those measures down to where they were just, you didn't even need the music, you just got them, right? So that's muscle memory. And that's actually with that Bumble Boogie song, that's like a muscle memory song from 6th grade, right? And I obviously didn't have any of the memory of the timing, because I didn't have timing back then either. But your muscle memory is something different than your cognition. And for any of my musicians out there, by the way, I want you guys to be aware of this, because this is something that I try and help my kids as we get into recital time. So kids know how to read music, but I think, and this is me, by the way, spiritually, I think that you are developing the body as your primary chakra from age 0 to 25. I think that is the era of the body. And then I think after that becomes the era of the heart for about 20 years. And then when you're old and decrepit and you can't move and the only thing you have left is your mind, that's actually where you get an era where you're getting closer and closer to your ascendance into the afterlife and all of those things, okay? And when you have students that are really young, we're developing this muscle memory constantly. And what happens when you miss your one note is your mind doesn't know where it's at. Your body knows where it's at, but your mind doesn't. So when your body gets off, that's what you'll see at a recital, is that the kids will play up into this one point, they miss their one note. So they try it again, they miss that note again, and they can't get back. They'll just keep starting from the beginning and they can't get back on top of their music. And then they freak out and have a tantrum because their mind doesn't know how to organize the process and all this stuff. So the best you can, whenever you see as a teacher or as a student, and regardless of your age, because I'm sure that most of our audiences are adults anyways, is that when you see your mind checking out of anything, just be aware of it. There's fundamentals that are meant for dexterity. This type of super annoying stuff that's awful, okay? And your mind will start to check out because it's so bored,
Yeah.
It starts to check. That's fine, but watch it and make sure that when you get off, if it ruins the whole thing and you can't keep going, you have to make sure that you're doing what actually one of my teachers taught me, which is called piano topography. And this I use for a lot of my jazz voicing. Okay, and this would be when you're doing something super complex, like a voicing like this, which is all different notes, and it's a complex chord. So you have your it's a C major 7/9, and you're staring over the top of. You just stare at it, like you literally. The exercise is like what is my hands doing? And it's called chord recognition. And it's where you stare at your chords. That's a G chord. And I'm like, what are my hands doing? And I'm identifying in my brain the F on the thumb. I'm just identifying that because we lead with our pinkies and our thumbs. Usually our mind can help find the chord with the pinky and the thumb. So watching that thumb and just sitting there and knowing these steps, hopefully with me and Sabrina too, what I think one of our powerful players is in this podcast is that it is normal, especially for something like jazz, for your brain to check out and for the don't be upset about not making improvements. Going back to our improvement is that like this, if you know this chord by the end of the day, you made your improvement. Because you can't apply it, that's why I have so much like performance anxiety and why I haven't done a lot of music producing yet, is that I'm just intaking tons of information. But like, this is where I'm at, man. I don't have a lot to show for it, okay? That was a cool little thing I did where I went, that's really nice to play, but that's not a song, dude. That's a really sweet chord progression for 10 seconds, you know?
Yeah.
So it's like, you gotta, your craft development takes so many steps. And I think leading back to this improvement, what this person said, what do I do, you know, or how do I get past not feeling like you're improving? What you have to do is you have to deal with the disappointment, because that's what you're avoiding, is the disappointment of the belief system that A, B, C, D, whatever it is that you know, whatever, and there's a million self-criticisms I could go down my list of mine. Okay. It's dealing with that disappointment. The second thing that I want, when I was talking about brain recognition, right? Bring your brain back to it and recognize that there are more steps. That's why you're dealing with the disappointment, is you thought that there were less steps and now there's more, and you're just figuring that out and you're upset about it.
Yeah.
You know?
It's kind of like people who think that there's a pill for weight loss, you know, and they're like upset that that's not a thing. And it's like, no, you actually do have to put in the
so many steps. It's just so many steps is the thing. And I joke, like, if anyone does watch my 6 episodes of YouTube, I'm going slowly through my piano lessons, and I'm doing it because it helps motivate me, and I'm videotaping them in this. But I also want to show people, from someone who has 15 years of piano playing experience, if I consecutively shoved them together because I've taken breaks, right? From someone who is well above the dexterity level of the average piano player, meaning that my hands are very capable of playing intense jumps and riffs and stride hands. So I can do it, okay?
Yeah.
For someone that has the level and has the dexterity and has the childhood training from 7, it still takes me this long. And that's okay. That's okay. I try to tell myself that every day. That's okay, you know, but when dealing with that disappointment, moving past the improvement is, okay, so there's more steps to this. I thought I was going to I'm working on Vince Giraldi's, what is it? Oh, Christmas Tree, that one. And he writes out this intense jazz stuff. And as he writes it out, I'm trying to bring my brain to the page. What is this? Oh, it's a flat 9. Oh, it's a flat, you know, I'm trying to pay attention, not just play the notes. And it's taking me so long. I thought I was going to be able to do it for a Christmas recital. And then I got 3 measures in and I'm like, yeah, right. You're not going to be able to do this whatsoever. I dealt with the disappointment, cut my losses, realized I wasn't quitting, dealt with my disappointment, registered that there are more steps in the process. And then after you recognize that there's more steps and you're not going to have this, but you're not going to have it, deal with your disappointment. Once you can deal with your disappointment, it's going to help bring you back. And with my procrastination library episodes, what I'm trying to get you to realize is, like, it's okay to take breaks. It's okay to recognize and register that you're not ready to produce yet. You're not ready to play that song. You're not ready. Your audience has to be your audience right now. And like, what'd you say?
After an hour.
After 1 hour.
Practicing. Give yourself an hour.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that was another thing I wanted to say. The giving an hour thing was awesome. And I wish I followed that at all. No, that's excellent advice. And on top of that, what I do, which is similar to that, which is like, okay, sit down and just give yourself this certain amount of time frame. The 1 hour is great because it's a very stereotypical, like, healthy place to be for anything. So if I can get to my 1 hour of yoga, which is what I did today, right? Cool. I feel great. If I can get to my 1 hour of reading, awesome. I feel great. If I can get to my 1 hour of Netflix, which is obviously the most important out of all of these, awesome. Okay. If I can get to my 1 hour of anything. So the other thing I do, because I actually, to be honest, 1 hour is super intimidating to me if I had to set that. For yoga, it's not. For piano, it depends. I try not to set limiters because my mom used to set a timer for 1 hour and that like freaks me out in my brain.
You don't feel time when you're doing what you love, you know?
I know. Then everyone, we're talking about all the people who don't feel improvements, Sabrina, and not all of us can be like you. Jesus. Mine is not a 1 hour. Mine is a fundamentals. So what I tried to do for a little while there when I was pretending to get up early, I have lots of things I want to do that I never follow through with, but I am actually getting better at waking up early. I can wake up pretty reliably at 7 now. I'm trying to get to a point where I can wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning for no reason and love it because I work evenings, by the way. If I can get up early and do my fundamentals, so that is get up and do this.
Self is getting up early to do a basic workout circuit, like
there you go, do your fundamentals. Yeah, and those that's a very body, when you're talking about like the chakras and whatever, that's a very body chakra. If you can get your body, because especially when we're waking up is like a body resistant activity, right? And a lot of times mine is very body resistant to piano. So if I can get myself doing these fundamentals, it actually loosens up my body a lot. And then I can open up my heart to like, okay, what song do you want to work on? Because I have resistance in my body and my heart, not actually as much my mind. I don't feel like it, but I'm busy reconstructing that chakra at the moment. That I'm in there relatively recently trying to move some things around. But specifically my body, like I do not want to sit still. Anyone who notices or has been watching, I'm like wiggling around all the time, kinesthetic / ADHD, like I can't sit still. So I still struggle with that with piano unless I'm super, super into it, have a lot of movement and a lot of flow going, like a fast song or a song I know, like sitting down and doing the nitty gritty, like we talked about with our jazz voicings. That stuff, like I have to acclimate my body, right? But your fundamentals, like your circuit, right? Or your fundamentals for piano, doing your little dexterity exercises. If you can give yourself, instead of doing a time limit for me, I have where is my book? Oh, here it is. My dog actually ate this one and then my friend had it and I literally took it home that day. 60 exercises for virtuoso piano. And what's awesome is you just open up and you have number 29. And this is it. They just do, I'm going to sight read this one. Oh, there we go. Yeah. That's a little fun one. It's just dexterity. And you just do it on each one all the way up. And then, by the way, any of my piano or musical friends who are watching this, okay? I know, was it Monica who was one of your pole instructors? I saw her doing some piano stuff and it was so cute. I love, she does this with her wrists and I'm like, girl, oh, you hot, get it. I love it. This is very difficult and it's an accuracy thing and it's a classical training thing. I want to see your hands pushed up in those black keys. So this exercise that I was doing before there, that's about dancing over the black keys. Most people come out here and what happens is that as you're playing, and this is a fundamentals thing, I haven't seen other piano teachers really teach this, unless it's like classical, super strict piano teachers. They'll be out here. And then when you need to play something in the black keys, that's Debussy, he's all about D flat. Okay, so if I'm all the way up here, but I come out into my white keys for any reason, I can't think of a chord right now in there, but let me just play one out here. This movement here, as you play fast, takes up a lot of time.
Yeah.
So as you're doing your fundamentals, if you're gonna build the fundamental, it's the same thing with working out. You want to make sure your form is good. You want to make sure that you're, and this is where teachers come in, or having your health coach or your fitness coach or your piano coach.
You have the form, you have the muscle, because you can't do.
Yeah, and you don't want to use wrong form. You don't want to use low wrist and get your carpal tunnel. Oh my God. I did a carpal tunnel video. Pianist went nuts for wrists up, thumbs under. That's another fun Suzuki one, and hands in. But just do your fundamentals. And then what I did for a little while there, before I had a freak out 2 weeks ago about my lawsuit, that really threw all of my chakras just into the 12th dimension. But if you could, God, this aligned me so bad. Although it's a learning thing, we'll get on that tangent. We're trying to stay on topic. That's this episode. Which, by the way, we really need to stop doing part 3, part 4, because we're going to be on like part 375. Unless you want to keep that joke going, which I'm totally down for. Good jokes.
I'm keeping the parts so people are aware that it's the same topic.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, that sounds good, because we're going to do this for another part 5, part 12, whatever.
Totally fine.
Yeah.
It's mine.
Yeah, it is your YouTube. I love this though. I love that you're like, you what?
I can do whatever I want.
You can do whatever you want, girl. Just do it. Just get it. Oh, last one I wanted to put on here, because I wrote little things right while you're doing yours. Okay.
I have to do more.
So I had my circle of death. Just do your fundamentals. So you just said do the hour. I said just do your fundamentals. So even if you can't do an hour, do your fundamental activities numbers, like out of my Virtuoso book, my number 46, number 47, whatever it is. And then so this one, out of my ADHD life, some of you know I'm a sign language interpreter. This one time I got married and my ex-husband was deaf, and I have so many stories, like traffic stops, pretending to be deaf, getting out of them because I had no morals intact whatsoever. Anyways, sign language. I wanted to relate it to sign language. Sign language, okay, anyone who's learned a language, and especially learned a language at like not from childhood, I mean like learned a language in their olden age, my old and decrepit age, okay, you have an input and an output. So in sign language, this is the sign, it's input, thumbs by your eyes, like 2 fingers, kind of almost like quotations. This is input. So this is where I'm taking in the information. That's what this means. Like I'm absorbing information into my brain. That's what we call it. Now it's there to stick. So this is my sign language for input, okay? And then output would be, well, I could do signing output, I could do emotional expression output, but we have input and output. And it's very, very well known that a lot of people can intake a language better than they can output it. I was lucky because my ex-husband was deaf. I kind of had a privileged life that I could sit and ask him really invasive, in-depth questions. He could correct my my accent. So there's a what they call a hearing accent, which is where when you sign, your wrists do different movements because they're not as they're not as put together as deaf people. So for example, sign, if you do this is a very hearing accent. You want to keep your wrists stable, do sign and pivot at the elbows. Okay. So input and output is something different when it comes to improvement. So most people think about improvement being their output. Okay. So I can understand everything in sign language, but if I can't do the sign just right without the accent, well, then I'm terrible at sign language. Don't think about your skill set being what you can output. Think about them being both. It really is 50-50. So you also, one thing that was very prevalent when I was in the sign language program, and what my schooling was I went in at a 3rd year because my boyfriend was deaf. So I had sign language training, outside of school. And then I got my interpreting certificate by like the end of the year for K through 12. So I was only in a couple of classes, but what I saw is that a lot of the students either couldn't intake very well because they didn't have access to deaf people or deaf communication and community. Because that's another thing, is that having a deaf community is not very prevalent right now. Antisocial, whatnot, and just some weird politics there. And then there's also the output. So there would be people who have been learning from a book and they've got very structured signed. It's very by the book. It's actually very correct. It would probably be what you want in a court system, but they may not be able to intake the language. So it's about both. Most people in sign language really don't develop the intake very well in the beginning because they lack that communication. But now to this day, I would say like my intake is probably worse and my output is probably better. And if I got back into sign language, which I am kind of looking for a community, but we're all COVID apocalypse right now. So whatever, I need to balance mine out. Think about that too with art, is that if you're not feeling your your improvement, that's what I'm thinking. If you're not feeling your improvement, you're probably not feeling your output of product. That's what most people are thinking. And think about feeling your improvement on the intake. So that's one of the things I'm doing right now, that I'm trying not to focus on my output, because that's where my self-criticism comes in, is like my output. I still am just like, ugh. Thinking about a children's recital, I'm like, can't play that because the format of my output is just, it's not where I want it to be. And I'm not going to perform something if I'm not, comfortable and whatever. So think about your craft, whatever that may be. Think about the input and the output. Think about where yours is better, where it's worse, and then try to adjust. So, hey, I need to work on my output. Okay, cool. We'll use that, the technique of your recording and whatnot. And then if you are feeling really bad about not putting out, about not having a good output, there we go, about not having a good output, then think about what you're intaking, and that will probably like help switch a little bit your priorities, about where you're spending your energy. My mom. I'll have to call her.
Do you call her immediately, or are you good?
Yeah, I'm gonna call her right now in the middle of this podcast. Hey, Mom. Dude, Drew Lynch, favorite comedian. I'm so fangirl for him. He called his mom on stage. He's like, hey, Mom, what's up? I thought it was so brilliant. I'm like, you're hilarious, dude. Like, just do everything
to the audience
and showcase it on stage. That sounds good.
I have two things to add to everything that you just said.
We're staying on topic so good today. Oh my God. Must be
no, we have I'll push past the next response after this. Okay. I'm pretty sure because all of these responses are also kind of like reworded in some way, but we'll probably like trigger another idea. So I'll just move on to the next response after this. But I was going to say, before you were talking about fundamentals for artists, what that would be is either if you want to just sketch for 30 minutes from life, or if that's still too much for you, like for your mind where you're like, oh, this sucks. There's very simple exercises like just filling a whole page with circles, filling a whole page with lines, like really basic shapes just to get your hand flowing. Mm-hmm. And for dancers, in the morning, it would be your either yoga or Pilates or something, like basic exercises for those strengthening. And then there's also simple moves, like for ballet, there's a series of moves at the bar that ballerinas do for warm up and stuff. Like you just do those, for at least 20 minutes or something like that. And then for writers, it's called the Artist's Way. Recommends that everybody does this, no matter whether you're an artist, like drawing, or a dancer, or a musician. The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron mentions for everyone to do morning pages, which is where you just basically you just throw up on pages in the morning, where like you just write whatever's on your mind. First thing when you wake up, it have to be like correct, or like grammatically correct, or whatever, just like whatever's on your mind. You can even write, this is stupid, I don't know why the hell I'm doing this, like just whatever, and just keep going, don't stop, and do that for like 5 minutes.
So important, dude.
It's not all of the crap and stuff, especially when you do have that inner voice that's being really harsh on yourself. It's better to get it all out than to like keep it in and then like have it stop you and block you. And it's best to get it all out on a page.
Well, and that's so awesome, because that segues really nice. What the thing I just wrote down too was stress. Now, everyone's like, just de-stress. Oh my God, yes. Like it is so common, and like almost drives me insane how much people are like, just eliminate stress in your life. Okay, I think that advice is,
just meditate.
This is my authentic self saying that's complete dog shit. Okay. Because it's very dismissive to the negative feelings that come up that are extremely important when we get into self-work and Teal, Swan, and all of that stuff. And why you and I are such big fangirls of her is that she does not turn away from negative ways of thinking. What she does is she invites it, and she says, hey, you've got a point here. The same way that when we think about people, and this is not to get political, but when you think about your way of protesting, and I really don't mean this as like politically what's going on, I mean your way of saying, hey, this isn't right. Maybe that was, if we go back to a previous episode, your authority figure, something's happening at work, something's happening, and it's stressing you out. That stress is telling you that you're being compromised in some way. Okay. And that's why your energy slows down. And that's why stagnation sets in, is because your body, your mind, your heart, one of them is telling you that you're being compromised. And what you need to do is register that stress, pay attention to it, and take the time for it. So for me personally, and I can talk about this, I'm dealing with a lawsuit currently, which my previous apartment complex, the ceiling caved in. Now, I told them that the ceiling was caving in for about 5 months prior to it caving. They told me it was too expensive to fix the ceiling. When it caved in, I stopped paying rent, which is within my rights. I protested that. And I said, you know what? This is an issue. They had a third party come in, say there was black mold. Like, it's a thing. Okay. Now we're at the point where I should be filing within like the next week or so. It's very towards the tail end. Everyone is, you're totally right. You're totally within your, everyone's supportive of pretty much like my perspective and all this. What's very stressful about it is that we're even spending time still fighting about this. They are sending me emails saying, no, we didn't do that. They're, trying to backpedal all of this. And it's very stressful because I have to prove very, with due diligence that all of this happened, and I have it, but it's like the amount of organization that it takes and the amount of emotional reactivity that I have had to it is very frustrating, because when someone says, no, this reality is not true, that didn't happen, it causes a visceral reaction in most people. If you have something like your home, like your relationship, like your children, like anything that would be extremely important to you, your art, right? And someone challenges your reality to a very strong extent, and I mean strong as an absolute, no, that didn't happen, or no, your product is not good, not even at all. Very, very absolute. Okay. Absolutes cause a lot of stress.
Oh yeah.
In other people, or in other people if you're absolute, but then also in yourself if someone else is absolute towards you, because what it does is it makes you have to adjust very immediately or fight very immediately. It asks for an immediate response. And this is usually a stress response. And when stress sets in, anyone knows that stress that sets in the body, it's inflammation. Okay. All of my dancers, I asked one of my little dancey students, I said, hey, have you ever noticed when you get stressed, you can't stretch the next day? And she was like, oh yeah, it's terrible. And this was so much stress for me a couple weeks ago. My sleep schedule got off, which took me 7 days to get back on. And I can't do my yoga if I'm trying to worry about sleep, because I prioritize the sleep. Then my yoga is back on time. And yoga comes before piano. It does. So I'm just getting back into piano after like 2 weeks of just stress. And I mean like practice, or back into an interest of like daily, okay, what am I going to do? And this also is why I haven't done videos, is like I've been prioritizing that response to stress. If someone has stress and you find that it's getting in the way, the biggest thing is to adjust and focus on your response to the stress, because the thing that's going to happen is that if you can adjust and take respect to your stress response and take respect to your feelings of negativity, reactivity, angry righteousness, if you can take time for those, because they're going to take your time away anyways, #procrastination. If you can take time to accept that part of yourself, what's going to happen is you become more resilient. And when you become more resilient, you can ground in your craft. And it means that when things come up in your life, like for example, for me, when someone starts weird stuff with me, I'm already going to know how to go through small claims after this. I've already been through a lawsuit before, but this is the first time I'm handling it by myself. No lawyer help, no friends help. Like I had a lot of help before. And this is so Lindsey, man. And it's taking a lot of time and a lot of stress. What it does is now my density of who I am is a lot more resilient. And in the future, when I'm working as a pianist and something emotional happens, it's not going to be like this reactivity. There's an exposure point there. And so understand that while you're going through these points of like, I need improvement, and you're having this type of, which really is reactivity, demotivation is a reaction to what's happening. Understand that the reason you're reacting that way is really an exposure point to getting better, which is the best artists and the best musicians in the world have learned like not to be fazed by disappointment, because they've learned how to accept it and how to live through that feeling, you know, of disappointment.
Mm-hmm.
So did we get to our first question? That was nice.
Yeah, we did. Before we move on to the next one, I would like to just shed some light on a really good technique for those moments where you have reactivity. Stress obviously comes from your emotions and negative thoughts. You know, you start to like go on a tangent in your mind of like all these negative thoughts when something stressful happens to you.
The meaning behind it.
Exactly. My therapist, she has a blog, and I will link it down below, but if you just want to, if anybody who's listening just wants to search it, you would just search Tiffany Goyer, Goyer, and type the thought model, and she calls it your magic 8 ball. It's a really good, like, actual it's a good tool to use every single time you find yourself stressing out about anything or having anxiety or any certain negative emotion over something. It breaks things down into your thoughts, and it breaks oh my god, it breaks your experience down into circumstances, thoughts, feelings, actions, and results. And she writes here, circumstances are neutral. Your thoughts are about the circumstance, which is what makes you feel what you're feeling right now. Your feelings drive your actions create your results. And she gives 2 examples. She gives an unintentional thought model, which is an unconscious reaction. And she breaks down like the circumstances. Office rent is increased by $500. And then she breaks down the model like, the thoughts are, I may not be able to afford the extra costs and my business will go under. Your feelings are fear. Your actions are circular thinking, like worrying, not sleeping, not out drumming up business as usual, frequent naps. And then she writes the results are, may not be able to afford the extra rent, because those are the actions that you're taking. And then she writes an intentional thought model, like an actual thought model that like you're more grounded and you're less reactive and you're being conscious and more about your thoughts. So the circumstances is the same. Office rent is increased by 500. Here's some intentional thoughts. I am a good businesswoman and I love my business. I got this. You know, you can take a moment and actually start thinking consciously. You feel more confident and determined. And if you're thinking you're bullshitting yourself, you can go back in time and look for evidence in your life where you were a good businesswoman and you did get through shit like this. And she writes intentional actions, like you can practice this thought daily, interview other practitioners to rent space from me, ensure that I take steps to make 500 more each month and more. I'm reading from her website. Brainstorm all the ways that I can do this and keep moving ahead with my plans. And the results will be the business thrives even with the $500 increased rent. So I always like to tell people to go back in time and look for evidence where you did get through really harsh, stressful times. And sometimes helping if you actually look at your anxiety and observe it and look for ways that it's not true in the moment, like our most fearful thoughts. Like a friend of mine was freaking out about something recently, and she was having anxiety, and I told her, I'm like, all that anxiety that you're feeling, look at it, observe it, and then look at yourself in the present moment and ask yourself, is what you're thinking of right now, all these fearful thoughts, are they true right now? Are they happening to you right now? Or are they just thoughts?
Something else to interrupt a little bit about the anxiety is one thing that was really hard for me. So anyone who knows this about me personally, I've dealt with PTSD and to a really, really big extent that I don't talk about very often just because it's not relevant, and I honestly don't struggle with it in the same ways, but to the point where your body is completely hijacked. And anyone who has dealt with anxiety attacks, you don't have to have PTSD, even though I think more people have it than would recognize. Okay, what anxiety is, as I understand it now, is your body is completely hijacked by your mind and your heart miscommunication, meaning your body stops functioning. And an example would be the lawsuit that I had, by the way, was an attempted eviction for having service dogs. And Callie, my service dog, when I would have memory loss from stress, would go and retrieve my cell phone and my car keys, the two biggest things that you need to function. So it was not a lie. And of course, doggies make me feel better, but it wasn't emotional support. It was like, no, this is a task. She also provides balance for fainting episodes and like all sorts of other little things. So anxiety is when your body is hijacked. And that's why negative emotions on a smaller scale it's very difficult to get action done, is because your body is registering that something's being compromised. And for PTSD specifically, like I've only had this happen a couple of times, was hysterical blindness or hysterical deafness. Deafness one was very weird because what happens is that your body stops processing vision, or it stops processing auditory. And now I don't actually have anxiety attacks like I used to. Oh no. And like the hyperventilation and all of that stuff would overtake the body. Now I just pass out, actually, which is a lot more, I like it better this way because it's more socially acceptable. People are just like, oh, honey, are you okay? Like it's a lot more socially acceptable. But when you have a super stressful event or circumstance, you have to, even this thing with my lawsuit last week, I just had a letter come in the mail that was, it's going to get them in a lot of trouble. But the immediate visceral reaction was my root chakra was ripped up out from under me. And I haven't had that happen in a long time because I've been working on yoga and chakra alignment stuff for years. And also I figured out how PTSD works. And so it's so much better for me now. But that getting uprooted to such a heavy extent, I remember being on the side of an AT&T sidewalk once. And what had happened was my business, I was a big time dog trainer in Beverly Hills. And one of my workers had slipped and fallen, and we happened to have a pit bull that we walked daily. Very good dog. Well, someone was walking by with a poodle, and the poodle attacked the pit bull. And the pit bull responded, but we have the bigger dog and it's a pit bull. Now, the good news is everything was on camera, insurance, the whole thing, nothing bad happened from this. But what happened was this person was a very fancy production Hollywood person. And the person that the dog we encountered was a very big fancy lawyer person. And he called me, I'm going to take down your whole business. I'm going to come after you directly. I mean, he threatened me physically. He threatened me fiscally. So not only physically, like, I'm going to kill you, but like fiscally, I'm going to take down your whole business and make you homeless and like the whole thing.
That's not okay.
Within an hour, my phone broke. So I didn't have a phone. I couldn't get in contact with my client. I couldn't get in contact with my insurance policy, which, by the way, my insurance, when I did get in contact with them, they dropped me, which they're not allowed to do. That's also illegal. But they just like, out of this policy that I had been paying in for how long, they were like, oh, what? We don't cover pit bulls. Sorry. They cut my policy, didn't cover me, didn't anything. And I was like, what do you mean you don't? I'm a dog trainer. I set up my policy 2 years ago. And now all of a sudden you don't cover me, Now it was their homeowners insurance that covered it anyways. They signed a 7-page contract. Like I did my things, but this ripped me so hard out of all the things I was grounding in because I was buying into the reality, because there is a consideration period that you have for any circumstance. And that consideration period is what your mind needs time to evaluate. So if you have a circumstance that's coming up in your life that is very shocking that you don't agree with, you need time for consideration, and you have to consider, is this person right? Do I owe them $5 million like they think I do? Do I owe them my entire business? Do I owe them my entire livelihood? One, for anyone who is worried, the answer is no. In case you were wondering, the answer is no. I don't care what circumstance they're in. You don't owe them anything other than maybe an I'm sorry, but there is a point where circumstances and accidents happen. And anyone who comes after you with a vindictive intention, you need not entertain vindictiveness at all. And so don't feel guilty about that. Don't feel bad that even though we had a pit bull, and by the way, the dog wasn't hurt in any way. There were no damages. So that's another detail. Okay. But it doesn't matter. This vindictiveness, I'm going to take down your whole business. That's irrational. Now, in that time, I couldn't filter that through my brain because I was too worried about things. And my root chakra was ripped up. And anyone who says, observe it. I'm like, observe what? The fact that I was calling my boyfriend and I was going deaf while people were surrounding me and trying to call an ambulance, which, by the way, an ambulance is $3,000 and they don't do anything other than some electrolytes for you when you're having a panic attack. So I don't want to pay $3,500 for electrolytes. But I couldn't tell them that because I was deaf and hyperventilating on the corner of a sidewalk. So it's like, you can't communicate any of these things because your body.
And fight or flight, yeah.
Oh, fight or flight is a nasty bugger, man. And so when you have any amount of stress, when it's like take the time to observe it, you have to allow your body to be hijacked. That's actually what you have to do. And my panic attacks were so bad during this lawsuit. Part of it was was the fact that I had PTSD. They were trying to evict me. I was very much under stress. The other part of it was I was buying into my own narrative because I had PTSD. That was legitimate. But because I had to prove how stressed I was in a court of law, like from this car accident I had 10 years ago to like prove that this stress exists because of the circumstance, well, you're going to have juries, so you need them to feel bad for you. Like that whole thing then makes you like create this narrative of, well, now I'm always stressed. And then you attract it, law of attraction. Like it was just a mess. Okay. So anyone who's dealing with this example of stress, when stress comes into your life and you get uprooted, whether it's minimal or maximal, that's a word now, whether it's a little bit or a lot of it. Okay. Letting your body be overtaken to the extent that it needs to be is how you integrate your physicality and how you actually create a lower amount of stress. And don't ask for help from other people because it doesn't matter the amount of attention you get. There might be attention seeking during this time. Like, look at me, I swear I'm so stressed. That happened to me because I felt like I needed to prove it. You don't need to prove anything to anybody, and don't ask them for help because they can't do anything to align your chakras. If you need to cry, go cry. If you need to have a moment, go have a moment, and acknowledge it's embarrassing and acknowledge that you don't have very much control over it and this is just what you need, and acknowledge that it'll pass. And if it takes 3 weeks to get your sleep schedule and your yoga schedule and your piano schedule, and if that's what it takes, it's just circumstantial. That's the circumstantial aspect of it.
I mean, it's important to also like go to people who are very validating of what's going on. Not that you're like having all these crazy emotions and everyone's like, you're fine, like gaslighting your experience. Go to somebody that like truly validates everything that you're going through, if that helps, because sometimes in those times it's hard to feel when you're those low vibes, like it's hard to feel any compassion towards yourself.
Yeah. And also talking, so that's interesting because there are two sides of that too. So when someone is stressed, okay, there is a little bit of an emotional rift there, because usually what happens is I'm stressed and I go to a friend for support. But sometimes that friend can validate you because they feel similarly and they think they're right, that you're right together. Other times that friend may not think that you're right in that circumstance. And understand that going to support doesn't mean it's someone who's telling you that you're right, actually. You don't need this person to agree with you. You need this person to allow you to act on your own. So,
or what you feel.
And this goes for literally anything, is that as a supportive friend, in my opinion, it's not your job to agree with them. It's your job to allow them to act on their own. And what I find is that with my friends, I can support them if they understand and have responsibility over their own actions. I can't support them if they want me to validate them in some way, regardless of whether I agree with them or not. A lot of times I do agree with them, but I recognize that seeking the external validation from me isn't self-serving. And so I will be like, sorry, I know that you're right, but me sitting here telling you that you're right about your boyfriend or your girlfriend, that is not good for your boyfriend or your girlfriend. And I actually support your boyfriend or your girlfriend, regardless of what they're doing to you. I actually support them as a person. And I can't support this act of you requiring me to validate that him or her is stupid in some way, because it's not true. What is true, that you're going through a riff or whatever. And I mean, for you and me being such good friends, like if you need to exclaim something, I recognize that neither one of us is in a hate speech. All we are is very expressive. We're very expressive, and I allow you to express regardless, and you allow me to express regardless. And that's what allows us to have like a very open and honest bond with one another is that we allow that. And so anyone who's out there who also is dealing with the backlash of stress from someone that they know or they love, recognize your role as the support system and identify the boundaries of what is best for this person. And sometimes it is you if they have self-responsibility. Sometimes it's not if they can't ground very well and they're requiring you to ground for them. Hey, I need to latch onto you because you're grounded. You're not going to be able to do anything for them because you're going to have to break that bond eventually. You know, they are or you are. And if you say yes to it, chances are when that bond breaks, you'll be to blame for it as well. So it's an interesting little dynamic there with stress. But
I always like to do the whole, like, I can see why you would feel like that, like right now, or feeling like that in this moment. If I were in that situation, I would probably feel the same way. Yeah. You know, the whole like completion process thing too, like what there's probably something in your past or in your childhood.
Where's the meaning of this come from? Like, what did your parents teach you?
So the next response is,